Welcome into the door of psychic experience. Ask and you will be given what you ask for. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. For everyone who asks receives. Anyone who seeks finds. If only you will knock, the door will open, and the truth within your higher spiritual self will be revealed to you. Come now with us and go where angels come, and you can too. There, welcome to our show. This is Psychic Experience. Thank you for tuning in. And this is going to be show number 52. I'm Reverend Doris Horvath. I'm the assistant pastor of the First Spiritualist Church. This show is being presented by that church. And the show is metaphysical and spiritual talk show. And just about anything can happen. It's very spontaneous. Our church is where angels come, and you can too, in San Diego. And it's 1 block south of the University Avenue and in what we call now City Heights. You can find the phone number at the end of our show, or else you can look for it in the phone book. We have many people working in our church to make things very, very interesting. We have wonderful teachers and classes. Our pastor, Reverend Deborah Feldman, teaches classes, and so do I. And we have a lot of earth angels working in our church, besides Reverend Deborah and I. Reverend Pete Monroe, our healing minister, his wife, Reverend Fran Monroe, and Carol Riker and Scott Riker, and Reverend Susan Moore. And on Tuesdays, you can have a wonderful treat by having an experience with Reverend Billy Baker. You can find out all that by calling our phone number. And we have special guests on this show that have been recommended to me by persons who have already met them and know that they do wonderful work. And so I would like to introduce to you right now the lady that's going to be talking with me today is Reverend Suzanne Boehm. And she's traveled all over the world, and she's written a wonderful book. And very shortly she's going to show you what the front of the book cover looks like, so you'll recognize it. And I just have her say hello to you a bit here. Say hello to the audience.
Reverend Doris, it's wonderful to be here with you and to share some very special information with you, the audience.
Well, I think what you're going to talk about is extremely interesting.
Yes, it is. Extremely unusual.
Yes. We're going to talk about near-death experiences.
Yes, that's correct, because I flatlined in the dentist office and
wow,
totally was gone and went through the whole near-death experience.
My goodness. Did the dentist know that you were acting sort of strange?
Well, it took him 4 minutes to realize that I wasn't breathing anymore.
Oh.
But then he started working on resuscitating and brought me back.
Did he have a funny look on his face when you came back?
When I came back, before I re-entered my body, I was floating on the ceiling, and I watched him, and he was very concerned. And I could follow their whole conversation of turn off the oxygen, and he was instructing the nurse exactly what to do. Exactly what to do.
And you heard the whole thing?
I heard the whole thing.
You could tell them what they said?
Yes, I watched him from above.
You know, that's a little bit off from that, but when I was a child, I always had dreams about being able to go up to the ceiling and float around up there and look and see what everybody was doing in the room. They didn't even know I was even there. All the time I had those kind of dreams. I didn't know what was going on. But after hearing about what you say and what some other people said, it makes more sense now. I thought there maybe was something wrong with me when I was a kid.
You know, when we're a child, we don't understand, but we do question why is that happening. And as we get older and wiser and we go through experiences like I just went through, then you begin to understand that everything does make sense. There are no coincidences.
No, there isn't. Well, did that change your life?
Oh, absolutely changed my life. It totally brought a creativity to my life that was never ever there before. I'm doing things that I had never even dreamt about.
You probably didn't think you would do the things that you're doing either.
No, I didn't.
Well, you already told us how you died in that experience, so I guess I don't need to ask that again. But you're saying something about a movie that you're going to be working on. Is that something recent that you're doing?
I just filmed in a documentary called,
It'll float by.
It'll come back. I just had that senior moment. Excuse me. It's at the end of Final Destination 2, and it's a documentary called Beyond and Back, Cheating Death.
Oh,
and
okay.
It's out now in the in the video stores.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I'll have to look for that. Well, when you did this, did you have that experience that so many people talk about, even children, about the tunnel of light?
Absolutely. I was in the dentist chair, and then all of a sudden I found myself in this dark tunnel. And I was in the tunnel, and there were all these little, bright little sparkles in front of me, kind of being pulled toward a light way far in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I found myself being pulled to that light too, and I felt buoyant and wonderful and totally fabulous. And I kind of shook my head and said, "Where am I?" I thought I was in the dentist chair, but that's not where I was. And then all of a sudden this light kind of pulled me through the light like a vacuum reversed and pulled me through, and I was on the other side of the light.
You went the whole way.
I went the whole way, totally flatlined.
Oh, wow. So then the dentist was working really hard to get you to come back, though.
I suspect he was.
Did you want to come back?
Well, it was so wonderful there, I didn't necessarily want to come back. I didn't even know I was gone. And it took me a while to realize that I was somewhere else, and I was ascending through these layers of light.
Oh.
And it was just the most unusual, buoyant, stress-free feeling that I've ever experienced.
What were these layers of light like?
The layers of light were white. They were curved like the softness of a cup. And each layer of light was a different white, a different brightness to it. But there seemed to be this little channel that went up through the center of all these layers of light and cradled at the very, very tippy top layer. As I ascended to that layer, were other souls in that layer that talked to me telepathically.
Would you call that layers of dimensions of reality?
Oh,
possibly.
Possibly. I'm not sure. There seemed to be people, souls, if you will, beings of light. I know at one moment I looked down at my body to pinch myself and realized that I had no body. I was just light, but yet I could think. I didn't stop thinking for 1 second. And so the mind continues on. And in that last layer, there were souls in that layer that looked at me as if I could see them, but it was like we were talking with each other with mind.
Did they have physical-like bodies that you knew they were there?
No, they were beings of light.
Oh, okay.
Beings of light. And yet it was as if they had eyes that we could see each other and we could hear each other. And they said to me as I ascended through that last layer, "We know that you know where you're going." And I go, "I know where I'm going. I'm not even sure what's happening." And with that moment, I shot like a bullet right to this middle of this beautiful, magnificent ball of light that had been cradled by this white layers of light. And the ball of light was like entering a bath of diamonds and jewels and gold and silver, and it pulsated. It pulsated, and the colors in the light changed the hues of the light from one beautiful hue to another beautiful hue. It was heavenly, if you would.
What would you call that ball of light besides being heavenly? Possibly that maybe it would be what someone might say was God?
Well, I would say, after having been in that particular light, that it was the realm of the Creator. Because as I was there, all of a sudden this magnificent voice comes out of this light and says, "You're safe. You're safe here with me. You're safe." And
it's like saying you've come home.
Who is that? Who is that? I kept saying.
Was it a masculine voice?
You know, I know ladies would love me to say that it was a woman's voice, but for me, it was a man's voice. It was low.
Like the Father's voice.
It was safe. It was secure. And I write in my book that his voice was like this ethereal blanket of love that just washed over you and just took all the stress away. It was better than angelic.
You got more than you thought you were going to have when you went to see the dentist, didn't you?
That was an appointment beyond appointments. Yeah, absolutely.
You must have been floating when you left the office.
Yes, I was. I wouldn't let the dentist send me to the hospital because I knew that I had been sent back for some assignments.
I mean, you were told you had some assignments?
I was told by the Creator, by the One, the Source, whatever you want to say, that I need to come back if I choose, and to come back and mentor and to deliver some very important messages. Some messages that will give a lot of people a lot of hope.
I wonder if it wasn't for that maybe you might have really died.
Yes, yes, because I was told at the time that I had earned my right to stay there, but that if I chose to come back, there were some chores I had to do.
You had a bargain.
Among which was to write the book.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, that takes me back to a friend I had in Vancouver, Washington. Her birthday was 2 weeks after mine. She was a lovely, lovely lady, wonderful to talk to. She actually died very young, and she had a heart attack. And but she had a near-death experience also. She told us that when it happened to her, angels of beings of light told her that they wanted her to come back for 6 months and finish writing her music. She had written some very spiritual music. And so she came back, woke up on the operating table, and her family took her home. Her son went out and bought her the most expensive electronics piano he could find. And she sat down for 6 months and she recorded all of her songs. And then she had a second heart attack and she didn't come back. She came back and she did what she's supposed to do. And I heard the music when I did the memorial for her in a big church in Vancouver, Washington. The music was absolutely ethereal. I never forget that.
That's a beautiful story. And I was told at the time by the Creator, when I was asking him, who are we as spiritual beings and what is life all about? And he said, well, when you were before, you ask a question of me. And so I allowed you to be born into the human experience so that you could experience the answer instead of like some fathers saying, oh, just because. We get to experience the answer to our own question. And he drew this big circle. And then he took 2 little parentheses way up here. And he says, when you ask that question of me, I allow you to be born into the human experience, and you go through the experience and you graduate, is what he called, what we call death, and said, but you have all the rest of this to live as your spiritual being. So there's a lot more to our life in a different realm yet to come.
Now you're saying you have a lot more to live. Is that like your lifetime to lifetime is like a big circle of events?
Like he showed me a big circle, and that we have all this yet to experience in our spiritual being.
Well, what else did God share with you?
Well, he said if I come back, he wanted me, number one, to write the book, which I argued with God.
Oh.
Can you believe that? I argued with God and said I couldn't do it. And he told me, we'll send you messages and messengers, and pay attention to those on your pathway. Pay attention to numbers and threes. And he has a sense of humor. He has a sense of humor. He says, I love the digital clocks, because every time you get 3 numbers that line up in a row, that means what you were doing at that moment is acknowledged and confirmed that that's what you should have been doing. So it's kind of a confirmation. And it's just amazing, all the things that he did tell me to do. But he said, come back and mentor. Mentor those that have come after you. And then he paused and he said, one thing in particular, he said, when you go back, he said, teach people to choose what they love to do, which they always say they love to do, he said. You know? And then he paused again, he says, but I don't get it. They say they choose what they love to do, but then they spend a lifetime complaining about it. So he says, when you come back, teach people to do what they love to do, and then do it with love.
Oh yes, especially
our lives
doing
will
it
change.
with love. Did you think you could write a book?
No, I knew I could not write a book. I mean, I just had a high school education and some special education, and I'd never been taught to write. And so I didn't have that confidence, and actually argued with God. And he says, the tempo, this impulse, and the light changed, and it went from all these beautiful hues to this pink, and then kind of a fervent red, maybe even a fuchsia. And he said, no, he said, you're going to write there and we'll send you signs. So one day after I tried not to write the book for about 2 years, the phone rang. And a lady says, a friend of yours said that you have material for a book. And we're starting a book writers class right here in Carlsbad. Would you like to join us? I'll never forget. I put the phone on my shoulder and I said, well, God, you're not going to let me get away without writing this book, are you? And then said, yes, I'll join. And 3 years later, the book was there.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So it took you 3 years to write the book?
Yes, because every week, every Wednesday night, I had a couple of paragraphs more, and we would read, and then they would critique, the editors would critique, and after 3 years I had finished the story.
My goodness, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Are you going to write another one?
I have a second one. Yes, the publisher wants me to work on a second one.
Oh.
So we're working on it.
All right. Well, I understand that you lecture and teach a lot of places too.
Absolutely. Oh, I've taken the lessons for living that were given to me by God and turned them into a workshop. And so I try to deliver His messages in those workshops. And one in particular that was a gorgeous message was that life bends back upon itself, and you can only take from it that which you give out.
That's true. You know, I'll just share with you. Years ago, my favorite aunt, my Aunt Doris, she said, Doris, she said, in life you only give what you get. You only get what you give.
Yeah.
And I thought she was completely nuts. I didn't understand what she was talking about because I was a teenager. But after my years of working in the First Spiritualist Church, I know what it means now. Because giving is one of the most blessed gifts there is to yourself.
Absolutely.
Besides sharing your knowledge and wisdom with others. So, near-death experiences are something that a lot of people, especially some doctors, they say that some sort of a chemical is released when you die, and this is what causes the experience, and they sort of poo-poo it. And
well, not anymore. I
not
just
anymore.
spoke for 250 emergency room doctors in Hawaii. And in the documentary that I just filmed, there was an emergency room doctor who said because we have new techniques that bring us back from the brink of death more and more during open heart surgeries like that, that they have to take and relook at the difference between the brain, the mind, and the spirit.
Do you ever work in hospitals to help people that are supposed to die?
I haven't as of yet, but I've worked with a lot of private people who have a loved one that is about to move on and graduate, and I've been doing a lot of speaking with the hospice organization. Emergency room doctors, emergency room nurses, those who deal with that.
That's wonderful, because I really do believe that people are afraid to die because they don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. But once you've died,
you know,
and you've been on the other side, you know that the other side is perhaps, if I could say, even better than it is here, in a different way, and that you're friends with death. You understand it. You know that once you die, you never die. We keep going on. Just like I said, there was never a change in thought pattern. From the moment I was in the dentist chair till I entered the tunnel, till I was speaking with God, the mind goes on. We continue to live.
I remember one story about this woman who was in a hospital, and she was going through surgery, and she went out of her body, and she was floating up near the ceiling too, and this particular light fixture up there, it had a name of the company that made it, the year and everything, and she read it. And so afterwards she woke up and told the doctors and nurses that she saw everything they were doing, what they were doing to her and everything. And they thought that she had just really gone whack when she says, but I can prove it. And they said, well, how can you do that? She says, well, I can tell you what that light up there says on the light fixture says on the side of it, what company made it. So they got a ladder and went up there to look, and found out that's what it was. Then they were really stunned that she was telling the truth. And she proved it. There was no other way she could have known, not unless she'd been there and went up on a ladder before she had surgery. Who was going to do that?
That's similar to what happened when I explained to my dentist. I told, and then you said this, you know, more oxygen, then you had her take this tool away, then that, because you're floating and you're watching all of it.
That's just really amazing. Well, I think when people see this show, you're going to help a lot of people come to the realization, to the fact that there is something else. And, you know, our church has always believed in life after death and communication with spirit. Spiritualist churches, that's one of the reasons why we're called spiritualists, because we believe in the continuity of spirit after death. And there's no end. And it's really a blessing for people to know that there's nothing to fear, that life goes on. And I really feel sorry for people that are crying and they're fearful and they're dreading what's going to happen, because they just don't know that unfortunately if they carry that thought with them, they might not go to the light as fast as they might. It could hold them back.
It could, most definitely.
Right.
And I know that Beyond the Tunnel will help those who have doubts. It's also about picking yourself up and dusting yourself off regardless of adversity and moving on. And it is also, it's about hope, that there is more, that there's a promise that is going to be kept and that God exists. Okay.
Yes, well, I'm very happy you could be with us today. For all those persons out in the audience, if they'd like to write down at the end of the show our phone number so that they can call you, and let's zoom in on her book before we go. And I want to thank all of our crew that's helped us today, and get a pen and pencil and write down the phone number of our church so you can call us. And just remember, we're the First Spiritualist Church where angels come, and you can too. And we want everyone to see a picture of the book. Let's just zoom in on a little bit more here. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if people want to get in touch with you, they can call our church at the phone number at the end of the show. And if you're not fast enough about getting it off from the TV, you can call the information for the First Spiritualist Church, or else it's in the San Diego phone book. Anytime that you want to come see us, we have our Sunday services, 10 o'clock every Sunday morning. And we have our worship service at 11. And if you'd like to find out some more information, the church phone number is at the end of the show is actually an informational line telephone. So please call us. Thank you so much for listening. And just remember, the First Spiritualist Church where angels come, and you can too. And God bless you. Bye-bye.